Bro, farmers say the YouTube light is fire. I just got that, bro. They just sent me that. I just got it yesterday, as a matter of fact. That's an official YouTube. Yeah, I got to be. I'm a little proud of it. I'm proud of it. I got 233,000 followers on here. This is an official YouTube light. I don't know if you can buy it anywhere, but this was gifted to me by Google. This came to me from Google. So I'm proud of this, as well as my plaque, my 100,000 plaque. I am, and I'm going to represent with it. But I share that with you guys because none of this is possible without you. I mean, this is really what it is. None of this is possible without you. Anybody who has any product or something that they can offer to the garden community and they want to be a sponsor on the 18-day composting challenge, this is another reason why I wanted to get it going now. The carbon bank, we're putting it in the bank. We're storing it for the bank so we can take those withdrawals out later. And as long as you putting that money in the bank, as long as you putting something away for that rainy day, you're gonna always have something to take out. And that's part of what we wanna do with this 18-day composting challenge. We wanna talk about planning ahead and looking for those times where we're gonna need each other and we're gonna need the resources that we have from each other. And it all starts today. 18-day composting challenge, the carbon bank. I think a lot of us came in, I know Broke said he came in 2020 with the gardening. Me personally, 2020 was a pretty rough year for me because it was the first time in my life that I had ever gotten sick, and it was because of 2020, and it was pretty rough on me. That's what ultimately led me to what is the garden now. So sometimes we go through things and we think that it's for the worst, but it turns out to be for the best. Had I not gotten sick, I probably never would have started this garden. And that's just the truth of the matter. There were just a sequence of events that was happening back to back that just kept putting me back here in this little space now, my 6,400 square feet of what I now call the garden, which was just my backyard in 2020. The days that I couldn't really breathe, the days that I felt like I was one step away from calling the emergency, squad to take me to the hospital. Those days when I was worried about not coming home if I went to the hospital. Those days is what brought me out to this backyard. And one day my wife came in, she had watched Grow Family Network, put those little cinder blocks that they get from Lowe's or Home Depot along with the little boards in between it. And she and my son came out here and I was sitting out here in, again, what's now the garden. And she dropped those things off and she's like, hey, you said you wanted to start a garden? Now is the time. We were all off from work during that little time. And that's where it all started. Matter of fact, the first two beds that were in my garden are these two wood beds with those cinder block corners on it. I had no part in putting those together. That's how weak I was. I sat here and I watched my wife and my son put those together. So this has become a part of my lifestyle, not just something that I'm doing. And I'm taking it very serious, and now that things are starting to shift and we're gonna need each other that much more, this is starting to make sense to me. It really is starting to make sense to me. In my prior life, I like to say, my job was to teach people to be better at who they were. That was my job. I taught people how to be better at what they did. But somewhere along the route, I think I lost myself in that. And that's where the growing out the box came from. Just sometimes you invest so much into the people around you that you forget to nurture yourself. And I remember Nikki, the OCDist chick, she said that in one of her videos. And that's why she's one of my favorite YouTubers. Because sometimes we do. We forget about what happens when we are not good. And this whole garden thing was a big part of making me feel whole again. So I appreciate you guys for just bearing with me as I went through my whole growing process, as I'm going through my growing process, and just sharing the whole journey with you. These little things like this, they matter to me. They matter. You guys being in here, sitting here, listening at me talk about what we plan on doing together, that matters to me. It's just, it's a blessing. This entire journey from the day that I got sick to now has been a blessing. And I just want to say thank you all for participating and being a part of this whole journey. And as much of this as I can share with you guys, this belongs to all of us, which is why I wanted to do this participation thing as opposed to a competition like we would normally do a competition. I wanted to do it as a participation. You don't have to be the best at this, but you have to put in effort. That's what this whole thing is about. That's what this 18-day composting challenge is about. It's about challenging you to do something that maybe you've never done before and you may have doubted yourself. We're gonna all work through it together. We're gonna get through this together. The minimum size to get that heated compost is gonna be a 3 by 3 by 3. And that's in order to get that pile to heat up. Being that we're doing the 18 days, again, it's going to be 4 days. We build the pile. You start with your carbons, which are going to be your browns. You'll layer it with your greens, browns, greens, browns. You'll go up like that until you get to your, probably want to go a little higher than your 3 foot because it's going to shrink. After 4 days, we'll turn around and we'll turn that pile for the first time. But before we turn that pile, we're going to measure our temperatures. So we're doing this thing official. We're going to measure our temperatures because we want to know where our temperatures started, which we're going to do as soon as we build our piles, and we're going to see where our temperatures are after 4 days. After 4 days, we should be anywhere from 130 to 160 on the temperature. That pile should heat up. It should be smoking. Even in spring, it should be smoking. That's how we're going to know that our pile is heating up. And then from there, I'm going to bring my microscope out and we're going to test our pile and see what our microbes look like under a microscope. We're going to be able to see what our fungi looks like. We're going to see what our nematodes look like. We're going to watch our nematodes eat our bacteria. We're going to see what's actually happening in our compost pile, and I'm going to show you that on the microscope. I would not suggest that any of you reach your hands down in an active compost pile. It's active bacteria and fungi at its peak. So if you have a cut on your hand, scratch or anything, you can get an infection by putting your hand in an active compost pile. I've seen a lot of people do it. I do not suggest it. You can look it up for yourself. That's not a good practice. You don't want to put your hand in an active compost pile. Your compost pile is living bacteria, fungi, nematodes, everything that's living in that compost pile. So when you put your hand down there, if you have a scratch or cut on your hand, that could be very bad for you. That can be very bad for you. So what we have here, this is how you measure your pile. Someone asked, how do you measure your pile? This is a compost thermometer, a 20-inch, this is a 20-inch compost thermometer. And what you do is you basically just run this down into the middle of your pile. And if you think about a turkey thermometer, it's simply a super large turkey thermometer. Our compost thermometer is going to tell us what our pile is doing. When you get to the green, it's telling you that your pile is heating up. When you get to that red, that's telling you that your pile is hot. That's where we want to get to, anywhere from that 130 to that 160. If you get up to that 160, you'll start getting to where some of the thermophilic bacteria will start to die off, and 160 is where you want to top that pile off at. So realistically, you want to be anywhere from 130 to 160. These are just some of the tools that I like to use. And I know, growing out the box, you be doing too much. Absolutely, absolutely. Because this is the only way. It's like I used to tell my son when we were working on the cars. It's so much easier when you have the right tools. You can have the concepts, you can have the principles, but when you don't have the correct tools, it's going to take you so much longer to do a simple job. Things like these compost thermometers, our pH meters, our refractometers, all of these things, you may say, well, we don't need those. Yeah, you do. If you want to get as close to natural gardening as you possibly can, the only way to know that these things are working, you have to almost become somewhat of a chemist, because we are dealing with live bacteria, live fungus, live nematodes, live arthropods. All of these things is life in the soil. That's why we focus so much on the soil as opposed to the plant. I showed you my plants the other day, very little to no insects. That's because the soil is doing that. I feed the soil. The soil feeds your plants. The healthier your soil is, the healthier your plants are. I grow also Comfrey. So I know a lot of us in here grows Comfrey. Comfrey is a great dynamic accumulator as well as a compost starter. Now, even when you're starting your compost pile, you want to have some active compost on hand just to inoculate your pile with. And one of the negatives, and Hands in the Dirts was talking about this the other night on Wind Down Wednesday. I think that was Wind Down Wednesday, if I'm not mistaken, where he was saying he think he got some bad compost or some bad cow manure from somebody. That's one of the things that you may run into when you start outsourcing. If you don't have cows and you don't know what you're feeding, what they're feeding the cows, if you don't have chickens and you don't know what they're feeding the chickens, that's something that you want to really take into consideration when you start talking about collecting from somewhere else. And this is why it's so important to close the loop. Create these things within your own circle so you can have access to all of these things that makes composting simple for you, and you would know exactly what it is that goes into your compost pile. My leaves, I know I don't spray any of my trees with any insecticide. I know I can use my leaves. I can't say that about my neighbors. I know I don't spray any insecticides or herbicides on my garden, on my grass, so I know I can use the grass clippings in my yard. I can't say that about my neighbor. The organic fertilizers that we purchase from the stores, they give you the ingredients that's in the fertilizer. So, I mean, we purchasing for convenience. It's kind of like Amazon. You know, Amazon is definitely not the cheapest out there, but we purchase it for convenience. We order it from Amazon, we get it the next day. Same thing with the fertilizers that we're purchasing from some of the big companies. We can make any of this stuff at home in our backyard gardens, but it's convenient to just order it offline. We can do the biochar, some of the best amendments that can go into our garden. We can do biochar right in our backyard gardens, but it's easier to purchase it. My wife would probably choke me out for saying this. I probably got 3 5-gallon buckets of urine. Yes, I do. I use urine on my compost pile. Now, here is the thing. Urea, if you look at the back of any organic compost package, you're going to see the word urea on the back of it. What do you think urea is? So here I am. I'm relatively healthy. And I would say this is a caveat. You don't want to use urine if if you're on any medications or any antibiotics, any type of medications, you don't want to use that urine. But for some of you grandkids, grandsons walking around, they peeing in the garden anyway. I know as a kid, when I was over my grandparents' house, I'd go out to the garden. My granddad tell me to go over in the corner and whip it out. That's what we did. So we got to stop being so touchy about simple things and I guess you might call it selective outrage, because these are natural things that we can use. What do you think they used back in the days to fertilize their gardens with? Urine, urea. Is there a difference between male urine and female urine? OCD's chick asked that question. As long as you're not on any medication, that is what I've researched. As long as there's no medication in your system, urine is absolutely a 100% go-to for heating up your pile. I would not put urine in my garden. One of the reasons why I would not put urine in my garden, because the salts in the urine will actually kill your microbes. What I like to do is compost it. If you put it, and I'm telling you, from experience, from personal experience, all my compost use urine. And I'm telling you, my wife would probably be choking me right now if she was home and heard me saying this. That is the secret to my compost. The secret to the compost is human urine. When you think about you going out and cleaning out your chicken pen, what are you getting out of your chicken pen? Wood chips that the chickens are urinating on, they're poo-pooing on. That's what you're gathering and you're putting into your compost pile. That's what we're talking about as fertilizer. What do you think blood meal is? Blood meal is farmyard animals' blood that's been dried and powdered. Blood meal, that's what it is. Bone meal is just farmyard animals' bones that's been powdered and dried. So I don't understand the stigma behind using human urine if you know that you are relatively healthy and you have a free resource that you can add into your compost pile that's going to add to the nutrients of your compost pile, that's going to add to the nutrients of your soil, that's going to add to the nutrients of your plants, that's going to add to the nutrients of your fruit, that's going to create you a healthy ecosystem. Like I said, we just got to really get into the mindset of closing the loop, reducing our carbon footprint. Most of our fertilizers come from places like Russia or Ukraine. We can grow all of this stuff right here in our garden. Like I said, I got comfrey growing over in my garden. I got alfalfa growing in my garden. Tithonia diversifolia, which is something that I hadn't mentioned tonight, and that's the Mexican sunflower. Mexican sunflower. Mexican sunflower grows up to about 14, 15 feet with probably a 6-foot spread on it, one clump, one plant, lots of biomass. That's what you want for your fertilizer. That's what you want. Mexican sunflower has something like a 1.53. So it's very good in nitrogen and very good in potassium. Potassium is the highway that pulls all of those sugars, pulls all of that water up into your plants, and what gives it the strength to fight off insects, to fight off viruses, to fight off funguses. All of these things we can grow right here in our gardens. Closing the loop, 18-day composting challenge. Get your bank filled up, shredded cardboard, shredded leaves. Start piling those up and go to growingoutthebox.com. Tammy Sherrill, if you could again, put that link up in there for the checklist that we're going to be having. And we're going to have some really good gifts for our 5 winners. And as I said in our last Lights Out Live, we may even have, just for that person that goes the extra mile and does create that awesome compost pile, we may have like a grand prize for that one particular person. But for the most part, our 18-day composting challenge is participation only. If you participate, you go through all the checks through the 18 days, you qualify to be in our drawing at the end.